up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your rear brake pads on a 2015 Honda Odyssey. And we're going to come over here. I've got the hood popped. Now before we get started, I like to take a look at the master cylinder. Take off the cap here to see what kind of level we're dealing with on the brake fluid. And you can see that this is very full, and if I were to compress the caliper piston, this would just spill out and make a mess. So I've just grabbed a couple rolled up paper towels, and I'm going to put them in here and let some of that brake fluid soak up and wick itself upwards in that paper towel for a few minutes. You could also use turkey baster or something like that, but I'm just going to put this into this little cup here next to it, and that should be enough removed so that we can push that caliper piston back in. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the cap off while we do that. Okay, now we're ready to push the caliper piston back in. There's lots of ways to do this. There's a special tool to push this back in, a caliper compression tool. Standard C-clamp will work. Sometimes people will even crack the bleeder screw here before they do that to remove the old brake fluid, and that's not a bad idea either, especially if you haven't changed the brake fluid recently. It's still a fairly new car. I'm not going to change the brake fluid this time. But the method that I use probably most often is just use a standard flathead screwdriver. And if you wedge it in here through the back of the caliper, this little opening, if you can get that kind of in front of the brake pad, but still against the caliper body, and then you should be able just to pull that towards you, and you can even see that caliper piston move back in. And we'll just push it all the way in, and then there you go. You can see that we've got a lot of room there now. Next thing we need to do is take off the caliper, which is these two bolts, and those are just that's a 12 millimeter. That's what that looks like. Just set those bolts aside. We will need to reuse those. And then you can just carefully lift that caliper. And in this case, we're not taking off the rotor. I'm just going to set it up here, up on top, somewhat out of the way. This little shim is starting to come off, but that's all right. So now we can pull off the old brake pads. Sometimes they're wedged in there pretty good, and sometimes they come out fairly easily. And I always just try to take note to the orientation of this little noisemaker. This is designed so that when it wears down, it will scratch on the rotor and make some noise. And this is fairly worn down, pretty close to touching that rotor, but not quite. Good time to change them. The brake kit that we have also comes with this new hardware. So we're going to pop these out. It's almost like a little retainer clip. In some areas they wear out and get really rusty, and this area it's not so bad, but we're going to go ahead and replace those anyways. We're also going to take out and clean these slide pins, which the slide pins sometimes will come off with the boot, sometimes without. There we go. Same thing with this upper one. So we're just going to clean off the old grease out of there. Not too bad, not too dirty. The grease I'm going to use is this Sil Glide. It's good stuff. It's really good for brakes, for all these for the slide pins, and we're going to put it on the brake pad as well on the back. Just a little dab or two on each, and just kind of spread that around. Try to coat that pin pretty well. And we can put that back in. Same thing for this lower slide pin. Just try to get it coated pretty well with this grease and slide it in on this side here. And that just kind of slides and pops into place. Sometimes you'll get a little bit of buildup of rust or debris underneath where these clips go, and you might need to hit that with a wire brush. These are actually pretty clean, pretty good shape, so not a whole lot of attention needed there, but we can can just snap these clips into place. Fairly easy. Just lift that upper one. Just like that. These are the new pads. They come with the little squealer or noisemaker, but it's not attached, and it clips in fairly easily. There's even this little recess in the pad for that. But just make sure that matches the same orientation from the old pad that we took off. And that was again on the inboard pad. So before we put that on, though, we're going to put a little bit of grease on the back and on the little ends, these little ears or tabs. Be careful not to get any of the brake grease on the surface of the pad. If you do, clean that off. And we'll put this back one in first. Just line that up in these little slots right here. A little bit of grease on the inboard pad here as well. Just a couple little dabs, and then at the ends or the ear, good amount to make sure that slides freely without getting any on the again, we don't want to get any on the surface of the pad. We can just kind of line that up into that new clip. Now before I put the brake caliper back on, you can see this is kind of gummed up a little bit. Sometimes you get some debris in there, and that rubber boot will get really dirty. It'll also get kind of brittle. So I am just going to take the opportunity right now, since we have it off, just to smear a little bit of this grease around that boot. Kind of helps keep that rubber pliable, and kind of wipe some of this stuff off of there too, keep it a little bit cleaner. And just kind of wipe some of that excess grease and debris out of there. It just looks a little bit better and probably less likely to bind up down the road. Okay, then we can just pull that caliper over the new brake pads here. You may have to pull on these slide pins a little bit to get them to line up, and then you can see that there's a little flat up here at the top, this little flat edge on these slide pins. That lines up with this little recess in the caliper. It keeps them from spinning while tightening them. And we can put those caliper bolts back in. So I suggest you double check your manual for the torque spec on these. If I get a chance, I'll look that up and put it in the description. But it's probably only around 25 foot-pounds. And you're done. Just remember to tighten everything per spec. Go ahead and step on the brake pedal once or twice, which will push the caliper piston back out, pushing the pads up against the rotor where they need to be. And top off the master cylinder with brake fluid at the appropriate level as well. Hope you liked the video. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. I will also put a link in the description to my website, which will have links on there for the Sill Glide and a few other products as well. But thanks so much for watching, and good luck.